Right, so we're good to go.
Okay, cool.
So can we have a little introduction into sort of how you've got into rugby and like what you do, who you are?
Um, how I got into rugby? Whew. I got into rugby in my first year at Exeter because I didn't really. I played sport at school, but not to like the level that I play sport now.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, when you started uni,
Yeah.
did you ever see like those are stalls and stuff trying to get people to like play certain things?
Yeah, like Freshers Week, the sports fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally. So that was basically, I just saw some girls at Freshers Week who played like women's rugby, and they're like, "Oh, would you like to try and join?" I was like, "Oh yeah, why not?" And they didn't have any trials or anything stressful, so I was like, "Okay, let me just join that." Because I went to the netball trials after playing netball at school, and I think I left the second I went into the sports hall, just because I don't know, I just don't really feel like you need that pressure of like trials and things like that when you're in a university environment. So yeah, I didn't play too much rugby in my first year of uni. I think I was too busy being a first year. I went to some of the training sessions, but in my head I was like pretty rubbish, and I was like, oh, I'm not going to be very good at this. And then in my second year, they had a new head coach. She was then wanted to make sure that everyone in the club got involved. So
really
even like little second years like me were like, oh, okay, I might like join in now.
Yeah.
And I was on the second team, and I started being pretty good. I don't really know how, but I guess I just started picking up the game. Third year, I had someone who worked at the rugby club at Oxford contact me. I remember when I got the message being like, oh, have you ever thought about coming and doing a postgrad at Oxford? My parents were like, Emily, is that fake? I was like, no. But like, there was nothing that the club could do to get me in.
Yeah.
But it was more like, oh, like, apply, like, see what happens. And then, yeah, I got in. So then that kind of took me here.
Yeah, so just for context for this video, you recently played at Twickenham, which is obviously huge. That's like amazing. It's been quite a quick evolution, like all the way through uni you were playing, and then all of a sudden you were in Twickenham. So like, can you give us an idea of like what playing there felt like, and just have you experienced any kind of discouraging attitudes towards your like evolution, or has it all been really supportive and like people have been up for seeing you in those like high position in Twickenham?
Yeah, I think it's like playing at Twickenham has been, I think, probably the best thing I've ever done. There's definitely a difference between like the men and women, like 100%. But I think it's something that's only getting better. For the women's team themselves, I think this is probably maybe our like 50th year of playing. I might not be like exactly correct on that. Whereas the men's game's obviously been going on for like over 100 years.
50th year of playing at Twickenham, or just right
50th year of playing varsity at Twickenham, I believe.
Okay.
But then the men's team has been like one of the oldest games that's ever been played. Like the men's varsity has been going on before like the Ashes and cricket. So yeah, it's definitely something that's on the up. The support that we get from like the Oxford club is pretty good, but it's not on like par with what the men's get.
If you can give some examples of how you felt that.
So say like our after party, the men's will have it at a really prestige club, and I think it's the Oxford and Cambridge club. But the women's, we had it in Twickenham, which I can't complain about because, like, to still have a dinner at Twickenham is insane. But that is just a difference between the men's and the women's team. Like, they wouldn't have a dinner together. Other things, obviously, just like a crowd in total. Like, the women's match at Varsity was before the men's match. So the women's match was, I think, at 12:30, and the men's was at 3:30. So obviously the crowds increased by quite a lot when the men's came on. Personally, I was really happy to have the crowds that we did. I know at Exeter, they also have a Varsity, which is a bit not as kind of big because it's at Exeter Chiefs Stadium, but barely anyone came to the women's match. They would advertise the men's and women's match, but the men would only really advertise the men's match. So they would say the men's match started at 5 and the women's match started at like 3. They were like, okay, the match starts at 5. the coaches leave at this time for the men's match. And it was never like, the men's match starts at 5, the women's match starts at 3. Get this coach at 2:30 to come and see the women's match, something like that.
Obviously, a group of women, professionals in what they do, empowering younger women to get better is always good.
Yeah.
But like, regardless of genders, it's their skills as coaches, it's their skills as referees, it's their skills as players. It's not, you know, like gender aside. Did you find that your team or you like personally improved as a player once you got the men's coaching, or did you feel a difference? I've actually only ever been coached by men, which is surprising really, but but at my level it was a lot of dads. They were always quite enthusiastic as much as they were for the guys, and it makes you feel like you're on that level, you're
on par.
So did you see like a difference in your team or a difference in yourself as a player once the male coach came in?
I think sometimes when there's a coach that has coached men, they'll sort of struggle when it comes to coaching women that haven't played rugby as much.
Yeah.
I remember when we had a meeting with the men's coach, he asked us like, how many of you guys have been playing rugby for more than 5 years? And like barely anyone put up their hand, because a lot of girls will start rugby at university because there aren't many opportunities to play rugby before uni. It's not exactly like it's in schools. I feel like most men come out the womb with a rugby ball in hand. And so he asked us that, and then he said, okay, how many of you have played more than 20 matches? And I haven't played more than 20 matches. I think I'd probably say like maybe like 15, 17 at this point. I'm not really too sure. I don't really count. But I knew I hadn't played more than 20 at the time that he asked. And not many girls had. And he then compared us to his 14-year-old son. Oh, well, my 14-year-old son's played this amount of rugby. We're not going to be playing rugby against your 14-year-old son. We will be playing rugby against other women's rugby players who would have also had this amount of training. I think they're doing a lot to like integrate the men's and women's coaches.
Yeah.
But I think it's obviously just going to be a bit hard for a man that's always coached men's rugby players to then coach women's players. Same game, but it's a different kind of a different kind of skill.
Yeah, it's a whole different experience, I think. Like you said, with some men in particular, they're born into a family of guys who've always played, and you're spoken to at school like, well, you either play football or rugby. And with girls, it's been a lot of like netball. Yeah. Football, I can't say because I've never played that to like a higher level than club. But I even feel like that because of the nature of the game. And also, like, the body type, and like, to be a footballer is a lot, again, more acceptable to society. Just going back to what you said about it not being really offered to you, obviously we know that because we're both girls who have played rugby. What do you mean by it not offered to you?
The first time I'd ever played rugby was playing, like, the touch rugby little tournament in year 6. Yeah. I really liked it, but I didn't understand it at all. I think they only had me on the team because I think a minimum of 5 girls. And I definitely scored a try in the wrong end of the pitch. At some little...
Tries a try.
That was the first try. Yeah. But that was like my first experience of rugby.
And how did you find it?
It just felt like the boys were running around and you were just kind of like...
Yeah.
I think especially because it was like year 6, so boys had been playing for a few years before then, and the boys actually knew the rules, and I just knew that you had to pass the ball backwards, and I still didn't get it. It was probably just a lot more like... The boys were involved, and like they had to be at least 5 girls, so they had at least 5 girls on the pitch, no matter what those girls were then doing.
That plants a seed to like you being there, not as a valued player, because you're just a girl on the pitch. I can really relate with that.
Yeah. And then I think going into secondary school, I was in bottom set PE, so that definitely didn't give me any confidence in sports whatsoever, because I knew I was able to be sporty, but then I also didn't look like half of the skinny girls on the netball team or anything like that. So I kind of just like didn't really get interested in sport too much.
Body types in sports and how they're projected in the media, and you have the body to achieve in a sport you love. Yeah. But because it's not shown as much, was that a part of why you didn't get involved as much?
A lot of what I thought sport was in secondary school was running. And I didn't like running long distances. I'm not exactly the fittest person I know, but that isn't what sport is. You don't have to be a long distance runner who has the stamina to take on a marathon to be able to play sports. There are so many different sports that have attributes that can suit your body type, that can suit your strengths, your weaknesses, your personality even. Now, being a teacher, I understand that there may not necessarily be the teachers at your school that can coach a women's hockey team, rugby team, things like that. But even just to have those avenues to point girls to sports outside of school.
Do you feel like you were supported by the education system to take on like predominantly male sports, or
No, definitely not. I think especially going to an all girls school, I think you'd almost think you'd be more in the avenue of like, you're a woman at an all girls school, you can do whatever you want. They would never throw, this is a sport that mostly men would do, let's try and get more women involved in it. I don't think I ever had that option thrown at me at all.
Can you give a reason why you think your school was like that? Right.
They didn't really, unless you were already a county sports player of some sort, they didn't really praise like sporting that much. So they would definitely, as you said, like the English teacher would praise like an English ability or like a maths ability, but they never really pushed us to sports in any way. We didn't really compete that much in certain like sporting areas in like the county and things like that. And it wasn't exactly like they were building up people that weren't already good at sport.
There's the want for it. You just need you need to be like, you need to get that foot in the door, which is like so amazing that you've been able to climb the ranks so quickly, and that's all through university. What gets you up at 6:30 in the morning? Why are you like, yeah, I want to go and do that in the cold?
The team, and I couldn't see myself properly playing any other sport. I think the way that women's rugby has allowed me to have the confidence in myself, like in my personality and in my body. Wow. I think I've never looked at myself with so much confidence since I played the sport, because there are women of all shapes and sizes that are all vital to the team. Yeah. Like from your props to your wingers, you will have completely different looking women. There's a position for every body type. Obviously there I don't know. There are people that won't be able to play women's rugby, but I think growing up, I was never like the slimmest girl, and I think that always then put me off sport. And then when I saw like the range of girls who play women's rugby, I was like, wow, like there is a position for me to play. There is something that I can do. I'm a lot stronger than I am faster, so I would be a forward and I would play this part. And it's like, it's so personalised to your own strength. I do think the only downside that I see in women's rugby right now is competitive or nothing. You're trying for like the highest level, or there's nothing at all. I think there's no real. So at Oxford we have 3 teams, and I think it's difficult, because if you're a better player, you then want to be on the better team. But say like being a PhD student here, I have a full-time job.
I think that also what comes into that is the gap in training and attention given, and the money that male players earn in comparison to, like, there are professional players who have jobs because the sport doesn't pay them enough.
No, definitely. Yeah.
Compared to their male counterparts, which, you know, the argument for that is, well, you know, the ticket sales aren't as much, but it's like, but the advertisement isn't as much. And
literally we
will never like bridge that until we start getting treated the same. So in your opinion, with like the money side of things, how do like corporations, coaches, schools, how do you go about fixing that?
It's a difficult one, because I think with so many athletes that want to play professional sport, there's a sense of, can I make a living off of this? I know women that play Exeter who, alongside university sport, also then play for Chiefs, which is just incredible. But it's like, can they also make a living off of that? Potentially not. There'll be, as you said, they're professional players who have full-time jobs, and it then makes it impossible to then devote your life to what you love. But they can obviously love their job alongside that, but it just makes it difficult. For a woman, it's like, I need to have a goal of a job and this is my hobby. It automatically makes it your hobby. Do you know what I mean? Because you can't see that whole, this is going to support me for the rest of my life.
And that's really interesting, that the thought of, well, is this going to carry me? Can I get to a level where it can pay me enough to live? Is something that you have to think about, that possibly, you know, if a man was to become a professional player, it'd be like, well, I could have a family, I could support them, and I could play, and that's no questions asked. It's like one way up. Whereas a woman, and not even like mentioning the thought of like having a family and how you come back from that, like financially, how it would impact you. So that is a huge difference that women definitely have to take into account. Since you've started playing, have you got anyone you follow, or anyone particularly, like, it doesn't even have to be a rugby player, like man or female, anyone inspirational to you that's like would be good for people to follow if they needed that like kick or push? I like to follow like the England rugby, like the women's and men's players, just to see what they're doing, see what they're getting up to. But yeah, I definitely follow like people like Emily Scarrett and like players like that, because I think they're pretty cool. There's players that I know from Exeter who like play in the like, what's it called, in like the England under-20s or like the England team, and I look up to them because I'm like, you guys are amazing. Like I know you from like when you were studying, and now you're playing this high level. So I think that's insane. What I love about like the whole following like rugby players on Instagram is there's one Aussie player who's part of the sevens team in Australia, and I think the Olympic team as well. She's called Charlotte Caslick, and like one picture will be her like gum shield hanging out her mouth, like ready to go, and then the next is like her in a bikini and like she's like, just have my nails done. And that's what I just love it, because it's like we as women don't have to be one thing. You like, you've just had your lashes done, do you know what I mean? Like, and growing up it was like, what, you play rugby? Because I'd come into school with like acrylics, loads of makeup, and it was like, yes. I feel like I like the idea of breaking the stigma of anything. Like, I don't want to just fit into the box of, oh, you've come from here, you do this, you do that. Like, even the idea of like studying like a subject like maths was like alien to me, because like, oh, women don't take those kind of subjects. And then playing a sport like rugby, like, oh, like girls rugby players, they don't look like you. I even had some like old white man come up to me after the Twickenham game and be like, "Oh, the prettiest on the team." And I said, "Thank you." But irrelevant to how I play, really, though, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I got my nails done today. Like, my nail tech was like, "Oh, but you're too pretty to play rugby," and I'm like, no.
Sorry, what's too ugly? Do you know what I mean?
I don't know.
Am I ugly enough? What's your point?
Yeah, I like people. I let people have their little opinions. Yeah. Like, something I just remembered was at Exeter. I think it was in like my second year. Oh, yeah, maybe my second year. There's this thing called X-Fest where people could send in things and basically just post them. And there was so much about the women's rugby players, like, just constantly kind of just shredding them. And I have no idea who they came from. Something about how the women look or how they play and things like that, and just trying to break them down. And I think that is the stuff that I struggle with. I don't care about people going like, oh, you're too this to play rugby. I think it's when people then put you in a negative light for playing rugby, because you're not as good as the men, but I'm also not a man, so I'm not going to play like a man.
You play like you. Like, man or woman, you play like Emily, like. Exactly. And the same with my other team members. Like, I know seeing those posts really upset them when we didn't. I have no idea what the attitude to that is now at the university, but you should never discourage anyone from doing anything they love. I think that's kind of upsetting, because I know a man definitely doesn't get, the men's rugby team are awful, and the men that play sport look so bad.
Yeah.
See, that's really like contradictory, isn't it? Because that uni's where it started for you, but then unis also, they are brutal. It's a whole other ball game that you have to consider, as well as the money, as well as like how you're going to be treated, like if you're found attractive anymore. Like it's something that you have to break. But I feel like people doing what you're doing and what I'm doing, in that striving for it being like a whole spectrum of things, like you are a high level because you're good enough to be and you want to be, but you don't have to be if it's just like a Sunday thing that you do, or maybe you just follow like a rugby gym workout. It's available to everyone, for everyone, just the way male sports is, whatever. So that it is so unfortunate, but on the flip side, it's where like it began for you.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it wouldn't put me off, you get what I mean? Like, I could never let what people said about what you do stop you from doing it.
I mean, that's a really horrible situation for your team to be in. And I can imagine a lot of the girls probably questioned their playing, maybe just for a second. But, you know, when you hear something bad about yourself, you want to stop doing that thing so no one says it anymore. To protect yourself. But as a team, like, how did you overcome that? Like, and personally,
we started this whole like video thing on Tackle the Stigma. So we basically like we had our end of season dinner, but this was all during lockdown, so it was like via Zoom. And we did this whole video of like us in our rugby kit, and then us in our like dressed up stuff, which was really sweet. And I think a lot of unis and sports teams across the country all did very similar things because it was all around the same time. And just showing that like I play women's rugby, but I also wear makeup, like I guess like straighten your hair, but then there's also girls that don't, and that's okay. Like there is a mixture of like girls that look a certain way, like people that don't identify as a gender, like people that think a certain way, have a certain belief, like anything, because you are all accepted on the pitch. Like it doesn't matter what you do, it doesn't matter what you think. Like I think that's just like the beauty of the sport. And
I think that's the beauty of all sports. Like they unite you because there's set rules no matter who you say you are, who you think that you are, or who you think other people are. It's like, well, we're in a team. And that's something I think is really valuable in sports. Wow. Has any coaches or maybe even like a player said something to you that's really changed the way you think about yourself?
I think like my biggest skill isn't even necessarily like the playing that I have, but it's like the communication I have on the pitch, like being able to read the game. When we played at Twickenham, we had a leadership team on the pitch that had certain roles. So my role was to get pods together. So if you ever stood on the pitch, all you would hear me do is scream for like this group to do this or that group to do that, in like the forwards pack. And I think just given that responsibility to do something at a match like Twickenham gave me the confidence to be like, actually, I am a really good communicator. I am a great leader in this form or that form.
I've just got, 5 like quick fire, just say whatever you want to say. There's no right or wrong. Just to like end things. So if you could solve one problem in the whole sports industry, what would it be?
Equality in pay in men's and women's sports.
Yeah.
But I'd also say equality from a young age in men's and women's sports as well.
I would say exactly the same thing. Like that would
It's the two ends.
What are your best qualities as a player on the pitch?
If not communication, then encouragement of other players. Something I spoke to you about earlier was like celebrating the little wins. So anything a player does, that was amazing. You've got this, like just encouraging your players around you, especially during a match.
Yeah.
Another one, carries, I guess. Like my tackling, and just like energy on the pitch. I guess that's what I get told a lot.
Oh, I love it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and can you think of the most embarrassing situation you've ever had, like in training or a match moment where you thought it's like cringeworthy to think about? I definitely have a few.
Oh, apart from scoring a try in the wrong end at the age of like 10, cringeworthy. I constantly ask really stupid questions, but yeah, I guess like just bumping into people all the time as well.
Yeah.
Like in a line out, you're bumping into someone. Like I would lift a line out, and I've definitely had people fall on my face before and things like that. That's pretty embarrassing. What were yours?
Mine's probably like the whistle's been blown, but you're so in it, like you're still trying to like do things, and they're like, stop. So,
yeah.
Lydia and I'm like, oh, I thought I was like, that. You're so in it, and then it stops, and you're like, oh God. Okay.
Actually, no, I have had a moment like that. I was in my second year and I was playing a game, and as I said, like there were things I just weren't understanding. I came off my feet in a ruck, so I was trying to like jackal the ball back, and I come off my feet, which is obviously like stop, and I didn't stop. The ref was like, "Oh, you're on your feet," and I was like, "What does she mean?"
What are you talking about?
And then she was like, "Okay, everyone else back 10." I didn't know what she meant by back 10. So I saw the 9. I was like, "Oh, I was going to tackle you," and she just yellow carded me off.
Yeah.
It was one of my first matches, but it was a shit show.
Looking back, what would you have liked to have been given or told or just provided with that early on to sort of keep your mind open to sports like rugby?
I guess the idea that you can always improve. Starting from where you are, you can always get better, but you have to start. So I never really started any sports outside of school. You can always improve from where you are. I guess everyone has their own strengths. Yeah,
exactly. I agree. Great. Well, that's everything. We've actually been chatting for like an hour, so that went so quick. Thank you so much.